on Friday. So
keep it in, keep it in.
Well, back into the country, teachers have demanded the withdrawal of textbooks provided by the government to students in secondary schools over errors and misleading facts. The Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers and Kenya National Union of Teachers said the errors must be corrected before students can continue using the books. KUPPET Secretary General Akelo Misori has blamed the errors on the hurried way the books were published. His NAT counterpart Wilson Sosion has also blamed the government for the mess. Errors have been identified in Kiswahili, English, physics, mathematics and biology textbooks, and some teachers have stopped using them. Let's listen to what the Education Cabinet Secretary, Ambassador Amina Mohamed, had to say on the same before we talk about the errors and what really this means for the students.
You know, it's a pilot, 470 schools, grade 1 and 2, and now we are moving into grade 3. It's a new, again, curriculum that's being developed with all new things. There are hiccups, and those hiccups will be addressed. The good thing is that you actually identify the hiccups so that they can be dealt with. But we're still rolling it out, and I think at the end of the trial period, we will come out and tell Kenyans, right, how we will move forward with that curriculum, the new curriculum, which is competency-based.
Joining me in studio now to discuss the errors that have been identified in the textbooks that were distributed in public secondary schools in the country is the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers Secretary General Akelo Misori. Thank you very much for joining us here in studio. Let's begin with, what are some of the errors that you have been able to identify in these textbooks? How bad is it?
The errors are significantly very bad, especially in languages, where you find some of the errors are giving wrong examples, especially in, when you are teaching a language like a topic like nouns, and then the examples are drawn from pronouns. So these ones are permanent marks in terms of concepts, learning, and so on.
Yeah.
So these kind of errors, especially if they are typographical, you can say that typographical. But there are errors where the examples are drawn from non-existing concepts. Then it becomes so dangerous.
Where do you think the problem is?
The problem is because the ministry was insistent that they had to supply the school with books. They chose now to ask the publishers to print the books in time for their political score. And that is what made the issue to go out of hand. And when these books were prepared, the manner in which they were delivered, there was no proper assessment and evaluation of the content itself. Yeah.
What kind of complaints are you receiving from teachers, and what action are you planning on taking as KUPPET?
The quality of the textbooks which have been supplied so far is low, and therefore they don't meet the standards which meet the expectation of the users of the text and so on. So these are the issues here.
So then you have blamed it on how hurriedly the government insisted on publishing these books and distributing them to schools. But generally, what do you think this will mean for students in public schools, public secondary schools in the country?
One thing is that there is a huge investment in this process. Remember the response we have had from the ministry is that the money which was allocated for this purpose occasioned now slashing of the disbursement to schools. And therefore, about 7.5 billion has been pumped into this. And if there is a revision on the strategy of now giving the books to students, you can see that it is a huge loss in investment. Yeah.
So then, as the KUPPET, because we have seen Ambassador Amina Mohamed, the Education CS, say they will rectify this. Of course, this is going to take time. Meanwhile, what is the situation in schools, even with these errors being rectified by the government?
We have seen also apologetic statement where the KICD is asking the parents to buy other options. And this means that there is going to be a lot of now parents digging deep into their pockets now to duplicate the acquisition of books, which in effect is trying to illustrate the fact that due diligence is not pursued in this process of securing and procuring the books themselves. In fact, we raised a red flag on the issue, but apparently the then Cabinet Secretary was hell-bent in ensuring that we depicted teachers to have been those who do not want the books to reach the schools. I thought in real sense, we have liberalization or in terms of distribution of books. It could have been given that opportunity so that we could have identified the best books ourselves, we could have procured ourselves, and then the schools would run as normal.
But the then education, so
the General Secretary said that we people were hell-bent in not giving the schools what they wanted, and therefore a responsible government was there to take responsibility.
Well, he also said that there are cartels in the education sector that have been reaping from this textbook
This one was basically to zone the cartels, in the sense that preferred publishers were now given the tender to produce the books. And that one meant that he wanted to control the cartel. He did not want to spread the cartels. But I think it is simplistic. The structures which were there in the Ministry of Education to oversee the distribution of books is what was wanting. We had no structural strategy to deal with this issue. And therefore, you know, the method or the strategy that the government want to employ in terms of this book distribution is not new, because we had the Kenya School Equipment Scheme, the Kenya Science Project program, which is next to Kenya Science. All these things had been tried and tested. They had failed, and therefore even the school milk program had been there before. We saw how centralized way of dealing with procuring facilities in school had failed. And that is the reason for which the government had thought that they needed to have liberalized the distribution of books.
So what are we saying?
What was supposed to be in place is to have quality assurance and standards officers all over to give feedback and to control what was happening. But if the government failed, we have now seen that they were not keen to look at the quality of the content of the books which are being used in school. It is so dangerous if it is in languages and which sciences, because these ones you cannot say or purport to say that you are correcting. You will correct, but the cost bit of it has gone to the dogs.
You seem a bit skeptical about this particular project. Do you think it's bound to completely fail? Do you think it's not effective for students?
This project is basically to institutionalize the cartel issue. We could have left it for competition, so that we liberalize knowledge. We have opportunity to have people produce books. We assess them with their competencies, and therefore we go for the books which we know as teachers are useful for our work.
All right.
But in the circumstance, it appears that somebody somewhere developed a concept that we can as well get all this money, and even if the quality is low, we are in control. That is what is happening.
All right. You think it was a bulldozed idea?
It was a bulldozed.
We will be getting back to this conversation. I want us to come back to this conversation. Kelo Misori is the Secretary General of the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers. We will be getting back to this conversation on some of the errors that have been identified in textbooks that were distributed to public secondary schools in the country. Let's close it for our viewers on KTN Home. We continue on KTN News with this conversation and more. My name is Akisa Wandera. Good afternoon.